Welcome to Invested Souls, the podcast where real estate expertise meets relationship growth.
And we're your hosts, the Flanagans. I'm Brad.
And I'm Jamie. This podcast is your chance to learn from our experiences and follow in our footsteps. Whether you're an entrepreneur, investor, or real estate professional, we've got the insights and strategies to help you elevate your wealth and achieve financial freedom.
But it's not just all about real estate. We believe that thriving in life means nurturing the relationships that matter most.
That's right. We'll be talking about how to balance your personal and professional life so you can create a fulfilling and prosperous future.
So join us on Invested Souls and let's grow together in wealth, relationships, and success.
Ready to elevate your life? Let's get started. Welcome to Invested Souls. Welcome back to Invested Souls. We have Scott Matthews here today, actually investor, real estate guru for the last 8 years and kind of dabbles in everything investing. So we'll dive right in. What do you think makes you what's your ideal investing strategy as we're talking about investing today?
So today with interest rates, because we're in Louisiana, insurance has been a huge problem. We really have to get something with owner financing terms. I feel like we're probably doing 50 to 60% of our deals have some sort of owner financing component, whether it's subject to where we just take over the existing mortgage and put some money in the seller's pocket. We usually stay in those for about 2 or 3 years with some sort of balloon, sometimes not. And then if the property's paid off, then we try to come to some sort of terms where we basically offer passive income to the owner who has been collecting rent, doesn't want to deal with tenants anymore. Maybe the property's outside of their reach, their portfolios in one area. They have this one 20-unit property that they kind of hands-on, hands-off, and we'll be able to pay more. But our biggest thing is we ask for a smaller down payment, something in the realm of like 10% or less. And then, obviously rates that are better than the market, somewhere in the 5 to 6 range, typically for a commercial asset that we're looking for now. And that's pretty much how we find all of our deals. Everything is off market. So we just text message. We have a cold calling company. We do direct mail. We do some online advertisements. We find that basically text or SMS and cold calling has been our bread and butter. We send out tens of thousands of messages every week and sift through everything. And we have guys that are on the phones all day long, trying to find the right deal, the right seller, someone who is, ready to work with us. And we do about 80% locally, but about 20% we do out of state. We do stuff in the Gulf South. We do stuff in Arizona, Nevada, Tennessee, stuff like that, where they're more popular markets and they're not as influenced by insurance costs because insurance has just killed us recently.
Don't send her anything in Arizona, otherwise, you're about guaranteed a buyer. When you come on those, I
bet I can get your messages. I'm on all the wholesale lists in Arizona.
I really do want to see and get to your website piece, but when you acquire that multifamily property, are you doing anything with regard to management stabilization, or is it just mostly your goal to repackage it and find a new end investor?
I would say it's probably 80-20. So we pretty much go into every deal like we're going to wholesale this no matter what. And then we'll pivot from there depending on how good the deal is, depending on how much action we get on the property, if we really believe in it or not. And is it something that we can handle from afar, that it's not, in our backyard, so we put a property manager in place. And we're doing that right now. We just acquired something 3 months ago, and we're kind of going through that right now. It's in Louisiana, but it's not near us. We've never even been to the property, and we had good owner financing terms on it, and it just kind of made sense for us to keep it. But I would say we always push for wholesale because that's why we're doing this. That's our business, right? Like we have to pay the bills. We have acquisitions guys that have to be paid. So everything is wholesale first, and then if not, we'll end up keeping it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Do you like having in-house acquisition guys, or do you just have a network and kind of a referral base?
No, it's all in-house. Honestly, I find that with wholesaling, there is no real referral. We might get 2 or 3 referrals an entire year. Basically, if it's a deal, someone else is going to take it. So we have to get to it first. And when you do a transaction with a seller, most of the times they don't have 10 properties that they're going to sell to you. They have one, right? Yeah. So our whole business is so transactional that if you're not marketing consistently every single day, you have a dying business, right? Like
Absolutely.
it will just go to zero like that. It's not like a typical agent where they're working off referrals after they get their name out there, because we're kind of operating, just below the radar, I guess.
Wholesale
Yeah.
is such a like a buzzword, but I don't think people really get the full breadth of how much the operating expenses are associated with marketing and stuff
Mhm.
like that. Do you have, for context, anything you're willing or would like to share in regards to that?
Yeah, I mean it's a topic we talk about every day. How do we cut expenses and keep the profits where they are or higher, or the revenue where it is or higher? And I would say if you're just getting started out, you probably can operate with a $5,000 to $10,000 a month budget. I would say we're closer to 40 on a consistent monthly basis. And, with that comes a few slow months, and 40 times three, 45, it adds up. So you
Yep.
really have to be closing deals. And that's why so many flippers and guys who are buying properties to own and hold them, they can't really do what we're doing unless you have a wholesale strategy, because there's so many deals that you're gonna not want, right? Like you're only gonna buy things that really fit your criteria, and that's how every buyer is. So you have to find the right buyer for the right property, and it could be a great deal, but buyer A might just pass on it because it's not in his wheelhouse, and you're going to be the same way as a buyer. So if you're marketing constantly to find deals, you have to be able to unload them, because the marketing costs will just eat into all of your flipping profits, all of your rental profits, if that's your game. So if you're going to do this world, you have to have all three, right? You can't just flip properties and market like crazy, because it's not worth it. You might as well just pay a wholesaler his cut that he did all that work for, and you don't have to spend all the money to go find that deal, and the time. It's very time intensive, of course.
Yeah, we talk about it a lot. Like, it's funny because you see the margin on some of the wholesale deals and you're like, but then you see the work that goes. Like, we have some friends locally that do it, and like the stories I hear, I'm like, you went to a hotel and then had to meet her at this other place, and you had to get this done and sign it here. I'm like, you deserved every bit of it, whatever it was. Like, there is no way in hell that I would be able to. That follow-up game is like next level.
Yeah, it's crazy. And theoretically, on paper, it looks like all you did was write a contract and then you sold the contract. But no one really, unless you're doing it, you don't really realize what it takes to get that contract and then get it to closing. Like just getting it to closing, dealing with these crazy title issues. Because if someone's willing to deal with you, they typically have a lot of problems going on with that property. It might not just be the property.
Right.
So we're dealing with successions all the time. Heirs and that own the property, and then one person tries to sell it to us and they don't actually own all of it. So you have to go out and track down that other person. And yeah, you should be rewarded for that. But, just because on one deal you make a killing, there's 5 other deals where you barely sold it for anything of a profit. So it kind of has to balance out. And I find that for single family stuff, we average about 15.7 to 15.8 per deal. But that's with $2,500 deals and $30,000 deals, and they kind of just all average out. Multifamily is much higher. At least, it was before interest rates kind of did what they did.
Insurance and interest rates have been brutal.
Yeah, it's tough, and I don't see a real solution to insurance anytime soon. A lot of people can't afford it. People are kind of just either self-insuring or underinsuring, and if a storm comes and they can't afford to pay the monthly bill of an extra $300 or $400 a month, what are they going to do if a storm comes in and rips their roof off and they're underinsured? Or, right. And so it's a problem. I hope that the state steps in and does something. They already obviously have, like, it's all state-run insurance pretty much now.
Wow.
So yeah, it's wild.
Before I was reviewing the notes, and you mentioned, like, what would you say your biggest success story is out of like all of your investing?
I mean, I would say,
or most rewarding.
yeah, because there's two different things. I would say monetarily, we've done really well on some larger multifamily, had big wholesale deals on those. But I would say the most important thing for us and me personally, that's kind of changed my life in the last 8 years, is just as the money comes in, I've always looked for one big renovation rental property per year. So, and I live around the schools in New Orleans. They're in Tulane and Loyola. So I'm always looking for rental properties for students. And nowadays they've gotten very expensive, and just in the last 5 to 10 years. So now you have to find something that needs a ton of work. So I did a deal last year. Took me 2 years to finish it. It was a massive renovation. It was way more than I thought it was going to be, but I finally finished it. It's stabilized, the tenants in there. So getting through that was for me, like, because I'm mostly wholesaling. So in dealing with contractors and all that stuff, and, it's a whole different game. It really is. And the permitting process and all that. So once I got through a few of those, that to me is more important, because income kind of just goes like this, and cash in the bank kind of gets spent. But if it's pushed into a property and multiple properties over the next couple of years, I feel like that's the only way to play this game. Because if you're just a wholesaler, you got to buy stuff. You have to.
That's going to be the snippet for like the Instagram. If you're wholesale, you got to buy rental properties.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I associate it a little bit because you're operate somewhat how like a mortgage company does. And so we'll manufacture a loan and then we sell the servicing rights and get our reimbursed and pay off the line and kind of rinse and repeat. But then some also establish a strong servicing portfolio, which brings in that regular recurring revenue. You got to play a little bit of a game with regard to the market and what's going to happen, if we're going to have early payoffs, and if they're going to stay in that loan long term, those kinds of factors. But going back to that 2-year renovation, because we've had similar projects where mostly long-term hold, find something undervalue, improve upon it, so on and so forth. So I would imagine you felt like you would have wanted to throw in the towel, burn it down, whatever, some point in time within that 24-month renovation period where you're not receiving revenue. People don't realize that not only are you pouring money into the property, but you're also paying the typical overhead as well, or accruing interest. Like, what do you think it was that gave you the resiliency to go through that for that long of a period of time?
Honestly, I would say I got a little lucky, because at that time, wholesale business was really good. So if you don't have the disposable income or the money saved to sustain yourself in a rental property, even when it's rented, and things come up all the time, I feel like people get in trouble because they get drained by a rental property, right? Mm-hmm. Tenants are calling all the time, regardless if you're doing a renovation. So at that time, I was okay because I was making good money. So it was like, okay, like I can sustain this. But even today, when wholesale business has slowed up and margins have been cut, we're doing a renovation right now that every time my property manager says, hey, you need to send more money to finish this project, I'm like, oh God, I can't wait till this one is done. So it's kind of like, where are you at financially? It will help you sleep at night. But I think that's the biggest thing that I always hear online is like, buy rental properties. And yes, you should, but you should have a level of income to sustain that. And I don't think it's like $100,000. I think you need to be at least making $200,000 at least before you start investing, because if you're investing, that's long term. You're not touching that money for a long time. And, you need to focus on income first. So like, I kind of got lucky that way, because my first property I ever bought was a duplex. I lived in one unit, rented the other unit. And it also needed like a $250,000 renovation, which I didn't realize it needed all that. But once I got into it, it did. And I wasn't making as much money back then. So, and I didn't do a construction loan. So I was like, every time I made money, I just dumped it into my house. And eventually it's worth a lot more now, and it's stabilized, and I moved out. But it's just kind of part of the process. And no matter what you read or who you talk to or who your mentors are or whatever, you have to do it. You have to go through it, because I'm laying in bed worried about this pipe that just burst in a construction project, and you can't sleep. And it's not the end of the world, but it'll keep you up, and it makes you a little more resilient, as you get further along in your journey.
Yeah, I think that's interesting when we've mentored, and it's like, there's a hard conversation of, you need to have income. Like, I get that you want to have rental properties to replace your income, but if you're really wanting to get the most bang for your buck, really, it's like you have to buying the house that needs some work where you can actually build into equity. You're going to get more, but you need the income. you need money to do it.
And that doesn't sell, like, because you can't sell a course to someone who's like, hey, you want to own rental properties and be financially free, but how much are you making now? Well, I make 60 grand a year at my W-2 job. And it's like, okay, well, you need to fix that problem before you can come over here.
Right.
Because it's like, buy these properties with no money and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, you can take people's money, but now you have a whole nother responsibility of other people's money.
Yep.
I've built myself a little portfolio, and I have, wholesaling business stuff, but I still don't really feel comfortable taking random people's money. I never have up to this point, and eventually I think you should. I think if you really want to scale, it's worth it because equity is more expensive than debt, but it's faster. So
yeah,
right. It's all in a matter of how quickly you want to scale and to what degree you want to add more people into the mix. We are fortunate to just not have the schedules to accommodate a fund where we have investors. So we've steered pretty clear of that, but absolutely is an intriguing business model. So glad.
Yeah. One final question that I'll ask you about is the biggest thing right now is evaluating property values and the market being it's hard to really value properties right now. So how are you guys going in? Are you more aggressive on more conservative from your buying standpoint in this market? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so today it's more of it has to be a can't lose deal. Like we're going to make, and we don't just blindly make offers. Even if we've done all our numbers, we don't just call you up and say, hey, we'll pay you $60,000 for this. I hope you can take it, because most people are just, they're gonna hang up on you.
Yeah.
It really comes down to what does make sense for the seller that it still makes sense for you. And it's not always about the number. Sometimes it's about timing. And like I said earlier, sometimes it's about terms. Terms matter so much, because so many people that I sell properties to, if I brought them a property without terms, they would not buy this property. They wouldn't even look at it at the price that we have to sell it at because of how much equity the seller doesn't have. Right. Mm-hmm. So it really comes down to how much equity does the seller have. And if they don't have a ton of equity, but their monthly payment is only $1,000 and you can rent that property for $16, $17 a month and you only have to give them 15 grand down, they're going to do that all day long. They don't have to go to a bank, right? They don't have to deal with any sort of loan cost. They don't have to even put up the insurance money when they buy it. They're just going to take over everything that's on the property. And that's how we get around higher prices, because a lot of sellers are still stuck in the 2021, 22, even early 23 prices. And I think what's unfortunately probably coming is some people are just going to be more and more forced to sell because they can't afford the rising insurance costs. And what do you do when you need money? You either sell your biggest asset or you sell your biggest asset that you don't live in, right? So the second property is what they'll usually offload. And now so many properties are sitting on the market, especially in there's so much inventory now which it doesn't seem to be the case in most markets. I think we're struggling more than most markets, but they see that and they're like, okay, it's going to take 180 days for this property possibly to sell, but I can just take your lower offer now and sell it in 30 days. I'll do it. I think that's where we have to come.
Well, terms, it's like when you calculate them, it's like the holding costs. And terms for the seller and terms for the buyer is, you can make it work. You just have to put some brain power behind it of how structuring it the right way for everybody.
Strategy, and then I'm sure you're educating a majority of them maybe on some tax benefits that they didn't consider, and now all of a sudden, that's to me like that deeper level where you're actually serving somebody through this transaction. There's a win-win. You're winning, but you're bailing them out of a financial nightmare, or you're helping them go realign their life, whatever the circumstances are. So, and I think what I found it takes in this industry, and especially at this kind of a market where it isn't the easy transactional time where stuff's falling out of the sky, we are here because we either take a lot of pride in doing what we do and doing it well, or we're actually solving problems for the communities that we serve. So
yeah, you have to, you have to solve their problem. like more, and I try to get that across to my guys. It's just like, you cannot just be transactional with these people. Like, you need to hear them out. And, we're dealing with one right now. Like, the guy is moving into a nursing home. He's selling his house, but he doesn't move till the end of November, and he's not sure if he needs. So we give him a till the end of November contract with a 30-day extension on there, and we'll work around it. Whether we buy it or we wholesale it, doesn't matter. We'll work around it as long as the numbers work, which they seem to. So, you have to be, and we've sat in that guy's living room 3 times already, right? It's not like pick up the phone and make
Right.
grand, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Don't text sellers. That's the biggest thing for wholesalers out there. Like, texting is a means to get on the phone, and if they're not willing to text you, they're not willing to do business with you. I mean, not willing to get on the phone with you, they're not going to do business with you. So there's a whole, a lot of things we've learned over the years. And at the end of the day, it's a hustle. It's more of a hustle now than it's ever been for me. At least I didn't work through the '08 crash, so I've heard stories of what that was like. And I don't think we're there by any stretch, but it's definitely harder. It's weeding a lot of people out.
I mean, the affordability factor just in general right now it's forcing people to make tough choices.
Yeah, you're right. And to go back to your question earlier, Jamie, in terms of like the after repair value, if someone is still going to flip a house, we always knock off 10%. Like whatever the comps are selling for, we'll knock 10% off that, and that's the ARV. And then we will work our numbers back from there. So we try to be a little more conservative, because we know that things listed for what everything is selling for, it's going to say, and,
right.
And these investors want their properties to move.
Yeah.
It's everything to them, so.
Yeah. One thing I'll ask you, and then we'll jump off, but do you work, like I work with, wholesalers in our market. Do you refer, like, okay, the seller doesn't want to sell for the cash price that you give them, do you refer to an agent? Do you have a partnership, or do you end up putting stuff together mostly on your own?
No, we do now. So I'm a licensed agent, but I have no interest of listing people's properties, to be honest. So I'm just not that good at it. And we always refer anything away. We've done some novations. Basically, we will put it under contract, and then we will market it after we do some work to it. So we'll clean it out, things, usually vacant houses that people don't want or have the money to do. And then we'll, try to get a market value for it with an end buyer. But we find that those can be tricky, because you're working on someone's house that you don't own. If the house doesn't sell, you're risking your money, like which has happened to us, unfortunately. But now we try to just push a referral. We have 2 agents that we work with, primarily. And, it's obviously brings some revenue in the door, not a ton, but it's worth it instead of throwing away a lead.
Right. Yeah. And the client gets taken care of.
Yeah. And unfortunately, most people know an agent, right? Like most people are like, oh, my sister's an agent, my sister-in-law is an agent or whatever, but sometimes they don't. And then we refer them that is a top producing agent, someone who knows really the market. And I find that it's beneficial for them too. So.
Yeah. Very cool.
It's huge. And this market's forcing the best to be better and to rise up, and pushing quite a few out. So if somebody wants to get on your list, wants to get in touch and see the opportunities that you bring, how do they do that?
Just go to KodiakSales.com. It's KODIK or IAK sales.com. And they just put their information in. They'll get emails and text messages when the properties are coming out. And then if they like it, if it's going to be available, it's only going to be available for probably a few weeks. It's either we move it or we don't, and we get rid of it. So
awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Fantastic to meet you. Hopefully stay in touch, and I'll shoot you a text when we hang up here.
Yeah, sounds good. What market are you guys in?
We're in Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
And then I'm licensed in Colorado as well as Arizona as well.
In Arizona. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm primarily on the lending side, cover half a dozen states. She sells, and then together we buy and invest in only we don't do any wholesaling. We do flipping or holding.
Holding. Okay.
Yeah. We'll buy properties ourselves, more so from like the listing standpoint. It's like if it's easier to get the seller to have the seller move out, we'll buy the property, because I'm like, either way I'm dealing with contractors, and then if they live there, that's just more work for me. So then we look at, okay, what if we just bought it and then list it after they move out, just to simplify things more than anything.
That's what I was like when you said I'm not good at the listing side. I'm like, well, shit, if you can market like you market, you're good at it. And then you know what a property needs to be market ready, you probably crush it. But it's good to have focus for sure.
Yeah, I just find that, you know, when it comes to like paint colors and like the cabinets on the tile, and that's not really my thing. I'm like strictly numbers. Like, hey, if you do this stuff and you sell it for this, you're going to do really well. And that's where I thrive, and like seeing the value in that. But in terms of like, oh, the paint colors are off and stuff like that, like our flips do okay. You know, I find that like we'll buy them because they're better flips than wholesale deals. But I would say in terms of house flipping, I'm B-, B+, to be honest. You know?
I'm like a B.
Well, you made me think of something too earlier when you said you're teaching the guys, I think you said, how to help come up with the terms. This great quote I heard was, you're paid for the information you receive, not the information you give. So by being a good listener, finding out what the needs are, that's where you're really going to make your money, as opposed to just trying to knowledge drop on them and make it all seem complicated.
Oh yeah. And that's the worst. And it's very hard to relay that to someone who comes in to work for us, because a lot of times we don't bring on people that have real estate experience. So, you know, we want them to learn fresh. But if you're selling by just telling someone exactly what you want to tell them, they're not listening. Like they want you to listen to them so you understand them and you work around what they're trying to say. And that's hard in sales. You know, it's hard for people to really understand that. But when you do, you get so much further.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agree 100%. Well, cool. Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, great to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you guys too. Hopefully we can link up again.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will.
Thanks for tuning in to Invested Souls.
We hope you found our insights valuable and feel inspired to elevate your real estate and relationship goals.
If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us.
Follow us on social media for more tips and updates, or visit bradandjamieflanagan.com. And to find out more about our Real Estate Wealth Accelerator, don't hesitate to reach out.
Until next time, keep investing in your future and nurturing your relationships. Thanks for listening to Invested Souls.